As software developers, we spend most of our time in front of our editor. As something we use all the time, we could benefit a lot from learning how to become more efficient with it. You're watching I'm Decoding Stuff, and today we'll take a look at shortcuts for supercharging your focus while working with VS Code on a Mac. Let's start by first understanding why we can benefit so much from learning some handy shortcuts. Every time we use the mouse instead of a shortcut, we have to do several things. First, take out one hand from the keyboard. Second, point at whatever you need to point, which usually requires fine movements that take time. Third, perform the action. And fourth, return your hand to the keyboard. In this process, you inevitably end up losing time and focus. If, instead, you replace some of the things you do with the mouse with keyboard shortcuts, you'll probably become much more efficient and focused. So now that we know why we want to learn this, let's dive right into it. Let's begin with basics and also the most used shortcuts, the ones to move around. The first ones that I expect everyone to know are the arrow keys. If you need to move close to where you are, these are just fine. Let's get more serious now. What happens if you want to jump straight away to the beginning or end of the line? You can do Command right or Command left. And if you do Command up or Command down, you'll immediately jump to the beginning or end of the file. Now, here's where things start to get more interesting. Many times we want to move inside a line. We could perfectly do that with the keyboard using the arrow keys. However, there's a much better way. You can press Option left or Option right and you'll move between different parts of the current line. If you want to get even more granular, you can do Control Option left or right to move between camel case words, which is useful if you want to move inside things with long names. Next, there's a neat little trick that a friend shared with me many years ago and I never stopped using since that day. It is for jumping to the last edited line. Let's say you're writing some code on a certain line and then you have to go to a different part of the file to check something. Instead of scrolling back, you can press Command Z to undo the last change, which will in turn take you to the last line you edited. Immediately after, you can press Command Shift Z to redo the last change. This will result in you being back in the line you had last edited without having to leave your hands from the keyboard. In this part, we're going to take a look at how we can switch tabs, windows, and also how to control VS Code's left pane. The first shortcut, and again, this shouldn't be any news to anyone, is that pressing Command Tab allows you to switch between different apps. I use it all the time to switch between VS Code, the terminal, and the browser that is running the app I'm working on. Next, if you want to switch between different windows of a specific app, Command plus Tab won't help you here because it will switch to other open apps. What you need here is Command plus tilde. Pressing that will allow you to cycle through all the windows of the current app. Another very useful shortcut that I use all the time is Command W to close the current tab and Command Shift T to reopen it. This not only works on VS Code but also in any application that has tabs such as your browser. Still talking about tabs, another great shortcut is Command Shift opening curly brace or closing curly brace to move left or right through the open tabs. Again, this works on VS Code but also on any app that has tabs. To finish this section, if you want to control VS Code's left pane visibility, you can press Command B. This is especially useful when you're working on a smaller display, such as the one on your laptop, and you want to make some extra room for your code. Let's begin with one of the most useful shortcuts in VS Code. It's Command D, and it allows selecting multiple instances of the same thing. For example, let's say I want to change all the places in which I'm doing prevent default and instead do stop propagation. I can use Command D to select all the appearances of prevent default and change them all together in one go. Don't forget to press Escape once you're finished. Otherwise, you'll keep on editing multiple lines at the same time. While you're selecting things with Command D, you might select more things than you wanted. In that case, you can press Command U to deselect one by one. In some cases, you want to select all the content in one file. To do that, just press Command A. This also works on any application in which you're writing text, such as Google Docs, your browser, your email app, or many others. To finish this section, let's take a look at something super useful to select any piece of text. If you press and hold Shift, you can then move the cursor around and you'll select anything between the starting and ending position. You can combine this with all the shortcuts in the first section to select text very effectively. And even if you want to use the mouse, if you hold Shift and click on any other part of the document, all the text in between will get selected. In this section, we're going to take a look at shortcuts for navigating the codebase. Let's start with the first one. If you have an open file and you want to jump to a specific line, you can press Ctrl G, write the line number and press Enter, and you'll jump right away to that line. Now, if you want to open any file on your project, it's not necessary to search for it in the File Explorer. You can just press Command P and type not even the full name but just parts of it and press Enter for landing right away into that file. Here, for example, just writing HTML or CSS allows me to open the files that I want. Let's say that now you're on a specific file, especially a long one. If you want to jump to a specific variable, method, or even test case, then you can press Command-Shift-O, write part of the name, and press Enter, and you'll jump to that specific part of the file. Again, you don't even have to write the entire name. Here, just writing up lets me jump to the update pending function. If you want to take this even further, you can press Command-T and you'll be able to jump to anything defined in your entire codebase. For example, here I'm working on index CSS and I can jump directly to delete clicked element even though I'm not with that file in the foreground. Take into account though that this functionality might depend on the language you're using. For example, if you're using JavaScript, it will search only in the files that are currently open, whereas if you're in TypeScript, it will work with any file no matter if it's open or not. If you want to search something in the current file, you can press Command F. And if you want to search in all your codebase, you can press Command Shift F. Also, take into account that if you have something selected and you use any of these shortcuts, you won't even have to write what you're looking for, since the selected text will be used as a search. Finally, if you want to navigate to a specific symbol, you can press Command and click on the symbol. I know that this uses the mouse, but it's really useful. Again, if you're working with JavaScript, it will only work with open files, but in TypeScript, it will be able to navigate to any file in your codebase. Now, we'll take a look at shortcuts specifically designed to make editing simpler. Let's get started with the first one. If you want to rename a symbol, you can press F2 and write the new name, and VS Code will change it everywhere. Take into account that if you're working with JavaScript, it will change it only inside the file you're working with, whereas in TypeScript or other typed languages, it will be changed in all your codebase. This is invaluable when you're refactoring your code to make it cleaner. Next, if you want to delete the line in which you are currently standing, just press Command-Shift-K and it will go away. I use this all the time, which is much simpler than selecting whatever I want to delete and then deleting it. The following one allows you to slide a line up or down, which is something that may sound silly, but pay attention and you'll realize this is something that you probably do more often than you think. To move the line, you can do Option up or down arrow. Also, if you add Shift to that, you'll copy the line up or down instead of just sliding it. If you want to toggle a comment on a line, you can press Command/, and if you want to do the same on multiple lines, you can just select all of them and use the same shortcut. The last one in this section allows you to open the Code Actions dialog. I find it really useful for things like auto-importing a dependency. For example, here, the vector class is not defined, so I can just position the cursor on it and press Command plus dot, and I'll get a bunch of options, among which I can choose to auto-import the vector class. Great! So this leads us to the sixth and final part of this video. In this last part, we'll take a look at some final tips that will help us learning new shortcuts. The first one is that if you find out that you're using something quite often and you want to quickly check if there's a shortcut for it, you can usually get a hint of the shortcut by hovering the mouse. For example, let's say I switch between the Explorer and the source control tabs quite often and I want to use the keyboard to switch. I can hover with the mouse on the tabs and it will show me the keyboard shortcuts. The same works for menus. There are many things that have a shortcut, and when there is one, it is displayed right next to the menu option. The last thing I want to show is a very important command in VS Code. All the available commands are accessible by pressing Command-Shift-P. If you press that and type what you want to do, you'll not only be able to do it, but also, if there is a shortcut for that, it will be displayed right there. Let's say, for example, I want to comment the current line. I can press Command plus Shift plus P and start writing comment, and I'll get the option to comment the code in the dropdown that appears. Moreover, I will be able to see what's the shortcut for it. So there you go. These are all the shortcuts I use to make my life easier and to be more effective while I do my job. I hope you find them useful too and start getting used to working with them. See you next time.